do 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 do. Oh, there it is. It's coming through already. Coming out. I was expecting it to take a little bit longer than that. It usually does. Right, shut up then.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Skiddly, skiddly, boo! Hello and welcome everybody in the chat room. Hello, good evening, welcome, greetings, well met, fellow, hail. All that good stuff. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Hope you're all having a good day so far. And welcome back once again. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening. All that usual kind of branding. Let's get all the branding in. I'm just checking the YouTube page. Sorry, distracted myself trying to multitask, doing too many things at once. Yeah, everything. Okay, let me change that view so I can see the chat room better. Go. Hello, Taz is in the room, in the chat room, and Dottie's in the chat room. Lynn Anderson's in the Lurkers Lounge. Hello. And Alan McVicker. Hello, mate. I laughed a lot at some of the videos you shared. Yeah, highly appropriate at the moment. Roscoe Pico Train. Hello. Steve Goose, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat room, mate. And Mascara Snake, hello, hello. Dave Iron, hello. Resi Tuber, hello. Chat's jumping around already. Just suddenly updated loads. I'm going to backtrack a little bit, find where I was there. All right. Hello, and Pete's in the chat as well. Hello. Sidefish, hello. And Ridiculizers in the chat, hello. Thanks for joining in, right? Quantum Epic, hello. Hello, hello. New Being, hello. And Stewie, hello. Dinny Car, hello, mate. Hope you're well. Out in the woodlands. Oh, man, it's jumping around again. Can you all stop posting comments? I'm going to catch up with the chat room. Yeah, sort of defeats the object of the chat room, but there you go. Okay, it seems to have caught up again. I think I've said hello to everyone I can see in the chat room so far. Faith Farah, hello. Thanks for joining us. And Austin, hello. Austin. Eiley McKinnon, hello. Thanks for joining in. Brandon Ben, hello. And Lion Share, hello, hello. And Snow in May, hello. Yeah, we might still get snow. It might even thunderstorm in a bit. We'll see what happens. It's not exactly been getting there yet. It's just raining a bit here, which is typical in the Midlands. Come to the Midlands, it's going to rain. That's just the way it is in the UK. All right, scroll down that chat room, catch that one up. Yeah, cool. Okay. It seems to be all going goodness. So let's get on with it. It is another edition this moon day evening, and there's been at least a few mentions of a particular story thread that I wanted to go back to over the last week. Well, certain new particulars that have occurred over the last week that have come out in the media or been presented by the media that coincide with a long-running thread that I've talked about quite a few times, but it's obviously coming up again because of how it connects into current events, contemporary events of the rollout of this technocratic control system. So I wanted to mention as well why last week it was called Epic Logs. I forgot to even say it while I was ranting. Epic Logs, because I was talking about that kind of the increase, the rise in the value of timber that's been reported. So it was sort of like, it made me question, why is this wood cost so much more? Is it because it's epic logs? And it just followed on from those other previous episodes that had something to do with epilogues, epic vlogs, etc. But this week, no more epic log connections. I had enough of playing with the epic wordage, word phrasing, etc. I'll mention some other stuff this week. And why in the subtitle this week, why does it say all the fish but no chips? All the fish but no chips. Thanks for all the fish. Goodbye and thanks for all the fish. All the fish but no chips. Maybe, I think a lot of people will get that kind of connection of some of the stuff that's been happening in recent months, last year plus. And obviously that, isn't out of the blue. That was all progressing along prearranged agendas and plans and objectives that some of the I like to call them as controllers or the cabal, just for ease of explanation, things that they have been wanting to work towards for quite a long time, 100 years plus at least, in its current coalesced form that is actually written down as an agenda, and is often simply referred to as Agenda 2030 or Agenda 21, but 21 has been added into what is now Agenda 2030. Also often referred to as the Green Agenda. Lotsam Tatro, hello. Just seeing the chat catching up a bit. And Niam Gada, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat.
I'm back now, Cookie, by the way. Sorry.
Hello.
I've returned arm of my Ruibus tea.
Cool.
And yeah, I saw High Plains Drifter. Yeah, I just
hello.
saw yeah, good evening.
Yeah.
And hello, everybody. Yeah, good evening.
Scrolling the chat. It seems to be going in jumps tonight for some reason. I don't know why. It's a bit unusual for this. I know sometimes it would do it, but tonight it just seems to be, every so often it's just going ka-chunk, ka-chunk. Summer, hello. Yes, welcome to the chat room. Welcome, Summer, to the chat room. We need some Summer. And the Rebel, hello. Right, okay, I think it's stopped doing its catch-up thing now, hopefully. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, all the fish, but no chips. Okay, to try and sort of encapsulate some of the backstory to explain why I'm talking about that fish and chips concept. Obviously, in the UK, talking about being a right proper governor, Miss Poppins, you got to have some fish and chips, Miss Poppins, if you're from the UK. I can't do the terrible Cockney accent that he does in the movie. It's just so awful, I can't even replicate it. But you get the point, it's got that cheesy cultural cliche about the UK loving their fish and chips. And that's somewhat of a, globally known cliche about the British. They love their tea and their fish and chips and their muffins or crumpets for tea. But that kind of concept of the fish and chips. And then the backstory to try and explain where some of this thread comes from. It's a long-running narrative that the controllers, the usurpers, the cabal, the manipulators, etc., want to insert a chip into your body so that they can, make various benefits from that technology being inside you, i.e. track you, restrict your ability to trade and exchange, access your personal information, your medical information, etc., etc., all the things that could be stored on that chip inside your body. And I've followed this particular thread, this concept, for 2 decades at least, because you're talking like the late 1990s when I was starting to get, it's probably even before that, in some of the material I was looking at before the World Wide Web really took off to what it is now. So it's not a new concept, and it's not new at all if you reduce it down to purely just the conceptual basis of them being able to track and trace and database and record everything, everyone, everything they do, etc., etc. You know, in the modern incarnation, they're referring to that as the Internet of Bodies and the Internet of Things, where your personal existence will be recorded and everything around you is recorded, etc., etc. But this concept of them wanting to put a chip inside you has been around for at least 2-3 decades, maybe. Possibly, I could argue even more than that. You're talking about the 1970s, 1960s, when the transistor technology really started to take off. And it was the beginnings of the computer revolution. We'd had the Industrial Revolution at the turn of that previous century in the 1900s. Really, the culmination of the Industrial Revolution. You know, I know the true Industrial Revolution was several decades before that, turn of the previous century, but the point is the culmination of it was around the 1890s, 1900s, when the world was truly interlaced into a global trade network, where there was international travel all around the world. There may have been a few places that were somewhat unexplored or fairly inaccessible, but general public international travel was possible, and that included the exchange of goods, commodities, etc. Worldwide trade. And then a few decades later, we get the rise of the transistor technology, and that leads into that computer revolution, where now it's not only the physically moving things around the world that have been linked into international trade, it's now all data, all information, all communication begins to be linked into a worldwide interconnected network, and hence the internet and World Wide Web, etc. So for at least 3 decades, as I say, arguably 4, possibly even 5 decades, there has been this concept that if you could attach some of this electronic technology to people, then you would be able to track, trace, monitor that little bit of technology. In other words, if you can make a little chip, as the classic phrase goes, the size of a grain of rice, and when you look at what they show you, it's like that'd be a fucking big grain of rice, mate. That's not a grain of rice. That's more like a suppository. Yeah, but anyway, they go on about this thing, the size of a grain of rice, that contains silicon-based technology, chip technology, as most people would understand it. So you get that concept of the chip put inside you or attached to you in some fashion. And that's the thing to me. This is why I'm being so pedantic about this concept and how it connects into other threads of what they're trying to achieve. That old thread was amplified in the 90s with the rise of the internet, thanks to the ability of the internet being able to share the information around more, with the statements of Aaron Russo. You can search all this online. Hopefully the videos are still fairly readily available. The clip of the interviews with him, where he's talking about how during his relationship with some of the rich and powerful, as they like to consider themselves, he was told that, yes, one of the end goal agendas is to have a chip put into everyone so that they can control people and control how they interact and whether they can trade and exchange or not, etc. So, in other words, that classic thread of the chip injected into your body, so it's the mark of the beast that you can be tracked and controlled through. That compounded the concept that the system, the cabal, the controllers want to put a piece of silicon-based computer technology into your body so that they can utilize that to do all as said above, previously. So that's sort of, a very short and simplified catch-up of some of the basis of that thread. I mentioned the mark of the beast element. This is where you get into that much older thread to do with that concept that comes from the biblical text, that each will be given a mark, such either on the hand or the forehead, such that they will not be able to trade or exchange without having that mark. You're not allowed to interact with society, basically, is the way it's phrased. You're not allowed to interact with society unless you carry in the mark, either on the hand or the forehead. And that concept comes out of a time, this is taking the, just the standard academically accepted history timeline, etc. This is coming from a time period where most of the people involved with the initial sort of rise of original Christianity and the formulation of what ends up becoming known as the Bible, the bibliothèque of stories all combined together to be a singular reference tome. They were living under the yoke of one empire or another, either the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Egyptians, the Romans, etc. These were peoples that were constantly moved from one place to another, where they were required to be registered in some fashion, and in most places pay some form of tax. And that's key to a lot of the stories from where it comes into the New Testament, the story of the life of Jesus and them going to pay the taxes and all that kind of stuff. It's that registration that is defined as the concept of the mark of the beast. That is just the concept explained as it emanates into a physical reality and how it is utilized by a system of control. Any system of control is based on empirical dimension. How can I explain that better? The systems of control, that mechanistic control method, is intrinsically tied to physical existence. In other words, they can build a machine that can count beans, but they can't build a machine that can think the same way people do, or feel or experience the same way people do. Even though I know in modern times they'll argue that that's what they're going to have soon. Honest, any moment now they're going to have a thing that's just like a living human. Right, okay. Anyway, so that's that mark of the beast concept. Please note, as far as I know, as far as my knowledge goes anyway, and there might be other bits about this that I'm not aware of or don't know about, etc., none of the translations give any indication or definition that the mark, as described as a mark, would be inside your body. All of it relates to a mark being born on the surface of the skin, either on the hand or on the forehead, so that anyone around you could visually see if you have the mark or not. All right, that's, as far as I know, that's how it is in that biblical context. But this is where you get to that sort of sequitur, the jumping point from how the concept then that relates to the physical reality of that timeline, where people had clay tablets and papyrus records, wood records, little tabula that were inscribed with the record keeping. They didn't have the internet and digital technology, computer, silicon-based technology, as far as we know anyway, as far as the academically accepted timeline is telling us. But you get the point. It was a paper and pencil reality. So the concept that a mark for each person, when you're living in a society where most people don't know about or know how to read and write, Maybe some did, most didn't. The general population did not. You know, they may have had a loose ability to read certain symbols, etc., but you wouldn't call them educated. Yeah? So the possibility of expecting the general populace to carry around a bit of paperwork or something similar, a little clay tablet, for example, and this is, you know, you can look at the archaeological records of how this is apparent that this kind of thing happened. People would have little ID taggers. You know, in Chinese culture, they had quite ornate ceremonial little markers that they would in effect carry around like a badge of office. You know, same thing. Yes, they did it in certain cases, in certain situations, but most of the time it was based on a combination of knowledge and record keeping. You know, you say you are such and such of whatever family from so-and-so village down the road. I record that information and I can always corroborate that with whoever is considered the law official in your territory. So the sheriff or the judge or the deputy or whatever, however that particular system operates, the centurion, yeah, they can check to say, ask the neighbours, like, is that guy, do you know him as so-and-so name and he comes from such and such family? You know, that kind of thing could have been checked and recorded. But the concept of the mark of the beast was reliant on a mark that could be physically visible to those around you and didn't require your ability to read or write, because they wanted to keep that distinction between priesthood and the profane. Basically, you were considered the flock, the profane, that is being cared for by the sacred, the shepherd, who is there as your custodian to lead you into the spiritual realm, etc. Anyway, the concept required physical visibility. In other words, a mark on the hand or the forehead that other people standing around you could see, like, oh yeah, he's had the mark, he's allowed to trade, or he's allowed to come through this gate, etc. So the concept doesn't strictly match to a modern interpretation. But in a modern interpretation, the principle that they were attempting to achieve transitions easily, no problem whatsoever. Because the core principle of what they were trying to achieve was simply to track and trace everyone, so everybody could be recorded and all their interactions could be monitored, so taxes could be levied against them or information could be gleaned from their trade exchanges, etc., etc. Yeah. Now we come to the modern time. And this is where I get pedantic about this definition of chip and inserting a chip into your body being equated to the mark of the beast and all the potential risk and dangers as related for people who are of a faith-based perception or religious, etc. You know, and they're looking at that kind of concept given to them by their holy scriptures, and they're then trying to see or perceive that within the world around them. And even for people who are not necessarily religious or follow a faith at all, you know, the atheists, etc., or have a different belief system, the concept of the mark of the beast still comes across in that kind of way. And this is where I have that pedantic problem with it. Because when you look at the principle of what they were trying to achieve and what was being described in those biblical texts, it's nothing to do with something being inserted into your body. It's just to do with marking you in some fashion so you could be tracked and traced by the system. And just like cattle, I think now is a really good opportunity to share an image that Lowland shared, a meme that I think very aptly explains this. You know, often a picture tells 1,000 words, can tell a story a hell of a lot better than some old guy rambling. But this is like the kind of tag that gets attached to the ears of cattle or other livestock animals Yeah, now, unfortunately, in modern times, most of the livestock animals are given chips, or often given chips. But this way of doing it is still, I think, the common way of doing it, simply because it's cheap and efficient. It gets the job done. For most of the agribusiness, that kind of industrialization deals with this most of the time. The insertion of chips is still not widespread, I don't think. Anyway, the point being, they want to be able to tag you in some fashion. So the reason I get pedantic about the concept of the mark of the beast equating to a silicon-based chip technology inserted under the skin or into the body is because that is a simplification of what they're trying to achieve, because the principle of tracking and tracing you and being able to monitor everything you do, etc., does not necessarily require the insertion of a bit of silicon-based technology into your body. They can do this in many other ways. And this same argument has been presented multiple times through history before the advent of the internet and silicon-based technology. So during last century, I can't remember exactly the decade, I think it might have been the 30s or 40s, but in America, when they introduced the social credit system, or the social security system, sorry, we're approaching the social credit system there. But when they first introduced the social security system, a lot of people, in particular people of religious faiths, turned around and said, no, we don't want this. This is the mark of the beast. You're trying to give us all numbers to equate to our existence, and that is what is described in the biblical text as the mark of the beast. And there's other examples from history where peoples of differing demographics didn't want to be recorded by the system because of the potential of how the information can be misused by tyrannical powers. Right? And this is what it all comes down to: centralization of information such that it can be used against the people that are being ruled over. So the principle is about registering you and putting you on a ledger so they can track and trace and charge you money or tell you can't go here or there, etc., etc. Like the passport, yeah? The other main reason why I get pedantic about this subject and the concept of a chip inserted into your body is because, as I mentioned earlier, I've followed this particular concept for at least a couple of decades. Yeah, I've watched that interview with Aaron Russo. I've seen it more than once, quite a few times. I've seen the concept presented in multiple different ways by different people over the years. And in my conclusion, where I am now, because this is obviously a developing thing, it's a constantly altering situation. But where I am now, I am very confident to say that they do not need to insert a chip into your body to be able to achieve a lot of the things like tracking, tracing, monitoring you, etc., that enable their principal goal of achieving that ability, being able to track and trace every member of their society and monitor everything they're doing so they can control them more. They're able to do that without needing to insert a chip into you. So based on that, why I get angsty about this concept of, oh, they want to put a chip in you, is because that very idea very often for the general public that are not generally interested in these kind of subjects and questions and, oh, the conspiracies theories, all that kind of shit, it leaves them with the impression that they have nothing to worry about until the government come along and say, oh, we're going to inject a chip into you, and now you've got to get worried. Now you have to be up in arms and go, oh, no, we're not having that. We're not having that. We'll have the passport on a digital device that we have to carry in our hand, but we refuse to have it inserted into our body. It misdirects people into a never occurring over the horizon event. so that they carry on going along with what's being done around them because, oh, we don't have to worry yet because the chip hasn't been inserted into us yet. At the same time, and in particular, I should say, over the last few years, the development of other technologies has far outstripped that 1960s, 1970s based concept of a silicon based little bit of chip in a little capsule that gets injected into your hand or wherever on your body. We are far beyond that now, folks, far beyond that. That is so outdated. The very fact that people keep showing that concept to the public, from my point of view, that is an insult to the public, because you're telling them that the contemporary governments of today want to utilize a technology that is 30, 40, 50 years old to enact some form of control over them. It completely leaves people disarmed to the reality that at the moment the technology is advancing at such a rapid pace. There will be a very rapid transition from a wearable device. You know, we mentioned this within the last couple of weeks. Anil Schwab giving his little interview from 2015 or 2016. I'm not sure. I showed some of the video clip last week, I think, where he's specifically talking about this gradual plan that they're attempting to initiate. First, they'll get people to have it as a wearable, or it'll be in your clothing. And then we want them to have it inside them in a chip or some form like that. Right? Again, he's talking about technology that is old. Yeah, a few decades old. He's quite old himself. You know? Anyway, he's presenting it in this concept of that chip-based technology, a chip technology of some form. Meanwhile, the actual development of technology has already got to the stage where, as I've repeatedly said, they do not need to have a chip inside you to be able to track and trace and monitor everything you're doing. They have already convinced a large part of the population that it's perfectly normal and okay to wear a device on your wrist that monitors your biometric data and records it. And potentially, if you're not very self-aware or questioning, such that you just flick through the terms and conditions and press yes on everything, you have the ability to check what it's doing with your information, your data. That's my point. Yeah. But for a lot of the population, they're just clicking through all that. Their information gets connected to some cloud-based data mining system. So without their knowledge and awareness, these little devices that they're wearing are monitoring and recording a lot of information about your biology, which also gives them an ability to monitor your emotional state. This has been shown and proven and admitted in their own paperwork and their own statements for the last few years at least. The actual technology has been known about and available for a few decades. They can take your biometric data, and from that data, they can extrapolate your mood, your state of mind. They can monitor your stress levels, etc. They can even take it to the point of they can indicate, combined with other data that they can gather, such as your social media output, your footprint online on the internet, which most people have all these devices interconnected, so it's all coming together as one big bloom of data. They can take that information and they can predict things such as likelihood of suicide. Not so long ago, Facebook stated clearly, it's like, yeah, we can tell by people's online activity the likelihood of them attempting suicide. So this kind of tech is already at play and being normalized. They didn't need to persuade anyone to have it injected into them. They didn't need to have national or international campaign of forcibly injecting silicon-based chip technology into people. They have, through marketing and trend manipulation and nudging psychological manipulation, they have conditioned a large portion of society to accept these things as perfectly normal. My smartphone knows when I'm in a bad mood. How is that? And I'm simplifying it, but that tech is capable of that. And now, as the years have progressed, the last few years, the technology in terms of biotech and nanotech is rapidly outpacing that silicon-based technology. So again, even more so, giving people the impression that the tyrannical regime is going to attempt to jab a chip into you, and you only need to worry when it gets to that stage. That is not only insulting, it's disarming, and if anything, it's leaving people totally unprepared for what is actually being done to them and is going to continue to be done in the coming future. This system that they are trying to build will be utilizing technology that will be able to monitor you without you needing to have a wearable on your person or something inserted into you. As I ranted about last week when I was trying to make this point before, the technology to put a chip into your body and to interconnect it into things such as a smart home. So you define your personal settings for your house, your home, and when you walk up to the door will open for you, and all your personal settings are automatically enacted, and everything just happens as if by magic or the wave of a hand. And that as well applied to a commercial environment, so businesses using the same kind of systems where you can't get through the security door unless you've got the chip in your hand that's registered to show you an employee with security clearance, etc., etc., etc. That is already commercially available and has been for years, since the 90s. And there are companies out there that are already and have been for the past several years implementing those kind of systems onto their employees. And there have been people out there applying that technology to their own homes and having a chip put in themselves. So this concept of they want to put a chip into you, everybody gets scared when they come at you with the jabby jab with the chip inside. It's too late. It's way too late. This stuff is already being trendified and normalized and marketed to a new generation that has been programmed with a perception of transhumanism for the last 2+ decades. So to them, this is like, oh, wonderful. This is like fish and chips. Yeah, stick it in me. Then I don't have to touch anything. I can just walk around and wave my hands at stuff and magic happens. My body is just a machine that can be updated at any time. And what Klaus Schwab describes in that little interview where he's talking about having the chip put into people is, as I say, as I keep reiterating, it is a stepping stone. Yes, they will happily make available a chip to have injected into you for those people that want it. If there's people out there crazy enough, in my opinion, dumb enough to say, yes, please, government, let's have the COVID vaccine passport and put it on a chip and stick it in my hand. Yes, please, I want that. If they're dumb enough to want that, that's them. That's their Darwin Award. But the concept of tracking and tracing and monitoring the population does not require that to occur. It does not require that chip to be put into people. And the concept of the mark of the beast does not require an electronic chip inserted into people. The concepts that they are presenting now, do another little screen share. I mean, I know it's just simplistic imagery to explain things, but I know for many people, it's that it's that visual learning element that helps for them to, you know, wrap their head around concepts and whatever, you know, hypotheses, etc. They struggle with formulating the idea in their head unless they're given some kind of imagery to help that formulation take shape, you know, to bring the cloud into some form of shape. So they're already trying to trendify this concept of a wearable that will carry your COVID passport ID. This thing, I mean, I know it's got a little QR code on the surface of it. I'll link this video. This was a video that Hugo Talks put up about this recent news event. This is what I say. This is stuff that's happened within the last few weeks as well. You know, they've been pushing this concept now really hard. The idea that you will have some form of ID, a biometric ID, a COVID passport, and rather than it just being a little bit of cardboard that says I had the vaccine written on it, you know, with the date and time and whatever, no, now it will be some form of electronic device, an RFID chip, basically an RFID chip, which will be a passive chip, which means it doesn't need to have a power device attached to it. You know, it doesn't have to have a battery attached to it. It is activated by an incoming signal. It's basically like a little aerial that relays the signal back to its source, you know. So they ping a signal out and this thing goes, yes, I'm here, you can see me, woo. And that's what it does. But obviously it'll include data that relates to you, your identity, your biometric ID, which will include the information about whether you've had the vaccine or not. At the moment, that is what they're suggesting it as. Yeah, this will be your vaccine passport record device, you know, the thing that you don't have to worry about carrying your smartphone around or losing your bit of cardboard. No, you can just wear this thing all the time. Then that was on Fox News over in the USA. They're presenting this idea, this concept, claiming that lots of people working in the hospitality industry, you know, restaurants, cafes, stuff like that, the employees are all now required, or they've been encouraged to wear and use these devices so that the customers can feel safe. Yeah, they can see the person wearing the wristband. Remember what I said about visible, the hand or the forehead, visible, physically visible. Not a chip inside you, physically visible. So the customers can feel safe seeing the fact that their server is wearing the wristband to prove that they've had the vaccine, blah, blah, blah. So all the fish, but no chips. This is, you know, to try and encapsulate what I'm trying to explain here, what I'm trying to say is, yes, there is a reality to there being a chip, a silicon chip-based technology available already and has been for decades, where it can be inserted into a person, a being, a human, and that technology can relay information to an outside source. You know, a query can be sent to it and it can respond. So in other words, yes, they can do that. It's not like Manlinda tried to claim where she said, oh, my husband isn't injecting chips into people. That technology doesn't even exist. You dumb. Oh, that technology has been available for quite a long time. So the fact that her, who's supposedly in a relationship with him, Billy Bob, claiming that technology doesn't even exist, he's just like, how dumb do you think the public are? Do you think they're all like 2 years old? Well, what kind of concept of reality are you trying to manipulate here? Anyway, being sarcastic just to make the point. The concept exists, yes. The technology exists, yes. It's commercially available, already has been. So this threat, or this potential threat of be afraid, be very afraid when and only when they come to inject a chip into you, and then all of a sudden it will be perfect biblical prophecy, even though in the Bible it doesn't say anything about stuff inserted into your fucking body. Or then it will be biblical prophecy, and then, yeah, everybody get woodied, get your pitchforks, get your torches out. Yeah, we'll go and get them. Too late by then. If we get to a stage where they physically attempt to force that kind of thing onto the populace, then yeah, it's too late already. You should already be in, working away from that, a long way away from that. But it disguises, it obscures, it blows smoke onto the already existing reality that so much of that end goal principle of being able to track, trace, and monitor everybody and what they're doing and how they feel. Remember what I said about your emotional state and stuff like that? That is already happening. That is already out there, and a large part of the public think it's perfectly wonderful and great, and it's normal, and we love it, and the kids can't wait for more of it. This thing never approaches you directly. The dragon does not show its face until you reveal its deception. This thing does not present itself to the public as a raging beast demanding that the public bend their knee or it's going to bite their head off. It presents itself as the cure-all, like the snake oil salesman. He just wants to help you. He just wants to offer you the cure. He loves you. Think of people like Tony Blair. That is one of the faces, the Hydra heads of this system. It will never present itself as being as it is truly, malicious and offensive and consumptive. In other words, it wants to eat you to fuel itself, to keep itself alive. I know I'm talking about it as if it's a singular existing thing. Yeah, it just helps me to explain concepts. It's never going to present itself in that way. It's always going to present itself as being the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, the most alluring, the most attractive, the most enticing, the most comforting, the most sense of contentment and security. That's how it presents itself. So this threat to all the fishes, because we are all the fishes. I'm lending from Christian theology with that concept. I made the point of saying original Christianity earlier because, Christianity has been through a lot of development over the millennia. But for a long time, that concept of the fishes was theologically important to Christianity. I would argue it still is to real Christianity. They've attempted to dilute it and misappropriated it and whatever else, but we are all the fishes. We don't need chips. Right? They want to gather up all the fishes, but to be able to do so, because they are not that divine Godhead, they do not have dominion over the true reality. They only were ever given dominion over the illusion of reality. Please remember what I was saying about how it will present itself as being attractive and enticing. It will dress itself in an illusion. It uses light to manipulate your perception. Hence the concept of the matrix and things like that. Anyway, it will want to present itself in that fashion because it does not have the ability, the power, you could call it loosely, to actually gather up those fishes or connect with all those fishes. Our spiritual energy, we are all the fish on the ocean of reality, on that energetic wave. We're all the fish dancing through that ocean. They want to gather up all those fishes and have a centralized, recorded ledger, a doomsday book of all those fishies and what they're doing and where they're going and who they're interacting with and who they're talking to, because for them, stuck in this empirical perception of reality, they are reliant on the control and manipulation of information, of data, so that from that they can create their rulership. I hope that makes sense. I know I'm verging a little bit into the kind of esoteric spiritual stuff, but that's the point.
That's where it goes, Cookie.
It is, yeah. When it comes to the simple methodology and, as I say, the principal end goal of what they're trying to achieve, we can describe that in terms of like the mark of the beast, but also in a modern interpretation, things like the devices we all carry around, the recorded information, whether it be on paperwork or electronic data storage, all of that corresponds to empirical record keeping. Whereas what we are as true spiritual beings, there is no little symbols that you can write down to represent that. There's no alphanumeric hash code that equates to that. And that's why I think it does go that direction eventually when you pursue this. If you keep digging down on it.
Yeah, and the watch, though, the wearable things you talked about, they're quite popular. I see quite a lot of people with them on more and more now. And they monitor your sleep patterns and all sorts. They're really getting clever, like you say, working out your emotional states. And that was even proven with that Cambridge Analytica stuff, where they could look at a photograph and work out if you was what type of person you were.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, the tech goes back, like you've been saying, a long time, and they're just getting more sophisticated with it. And now all you need is like a wearable now, or a smartphone, or and even these shopping cards and things. They've been doing it, collecting all kinds of data over the years. But now with the apps, the rise of the app, and we said years back that was what was taking over the world. It seems these apps, everything is an app, and a scan and a beep and a go, or not go.
Exactly.
Or you're not go. Yeah, you're not going anywhere, mate. It's that's where people have to be wise and start wising up and stop taking their energy away from these things a bit more. And like you said, it leads back to yourself ultimately. It's the shiny lights, like you say, the little LED screen that shines and bright, and the screen technology now has got so good, HD, 4K, ultra 4K, ultra super duper duper, whatever the fuck it is now. All this type of technology sucking people in to how wonderful it is. And it is like the transhumanism which you mentioned, which is what it is ultimately for them. It's about
it's also where you get again the crossing threads of occultism combined with advances in technology. Right? So I think Steve mentioned it in the chat earlier. I saw it whiz by the Lucifer rays, right? Because in one development of technology, and why I'm sort of arguing this, what might seem pedantic point, but the concept of that chip-based thing injected into your hand, blah blah blah, is way outdated. As the technology has changed over the last few years, decades, they've now made use of a chemical-based product which is similar to the stuff created in some animal life forms that can emit light. They can generate light, photosynthesis, not photosynthesis.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
I can't think of the word for it now, but you know what I mean, yeah?
Yeah.
And they've called it Lucifer rays because, and again, this is a really, to me, it's interesting, because the etymology of the words, the language, etc. There's this interrelation of threads that go far back into history. Why is it Lucifer rays? Because lucis is the word for light in Latin, and all our academic words come from the Latin. Mostly, occasionally you get stuff that comes from other languages, or Greek, for example, but the majority of it is from the Latin. And lucis, why is it called Lucifer rays? Because of the chemical compound and the fact that it emits light. So they developed this ability to create a little bit of technology that is, in a simplified explanation, is like a self-illuminating tattoo, but it's programmed to only respond to certain light frequencies. And the way they planned it out in the tech when they were revealing it, again, this connects to Billy Bob again as well, was that they'd keyed it to UV light frequencies. So if this thing wasn't visible until they'd pass a UV light over it, yeah? And the idea is this electronic tattoo, which contains a luciferase, would have the ability to slow release vaccines into your system via its quantum needles. Well, they called it quantum dot tattoo, you know, but these micro nano sized needles that go into your skin, and it would slowly release this stuff into your body. And at the same time, its data could be read when it, you know, it goes through this process of being scanned with a UV light, and then people could read the data of like, yeah, this was applied on such and such date, and it's applied this much dosage, etc. So again, they don't need to have stuff inserted into your body, and stuff doesn't necessarily need to be physically visible to a normal spectrum human sight, right? Stuff can be added to you that is only visible in UV light, or is only visible at other frequencies. Yeah? And then we get to the stage of the biotech, nanotech elements. Yeah, they've already been talking about for a number of years now that they are working on the ability to include things like pharmaceuticals, vaccines, in edible form. So at some point, it's going to get added into the food chain. Again, you don't need to have anything injected into you. This stuff, and they're referencing things to do with like that kind of pharmaceutical content. But if they can do it with pharmaceutical content, they can do it with nanotech content, or it could be some form of like the stuff they're pushing around at the moment, an mRNA manipulative gene profile, right? So you're sat there eating your apple, unbeknownst to you, included in there is that thing that's going to start making your body grow all those spike proteins and cause you to get ill and blah, 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 right? Do you know what they're putting in it? Is the label on the food now going to get longer and longer and longer because they're going to start telling you all this stuff that they're adding in that is like bio and nanotech? They don't need 40-year-old technology to control the population. The last, well, it's nearly 20 years, isn't it? Yeah, we're in the year of the anniversary. They've spent the last 20 years slowly building, maybe not necessarily slowly, a lot of it has been rapid, certainly in recent years, steadily building that infrastructure of that technological control grid. It's a technocracy.
Control, the word, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
They may talk about things being decentralized, but for the majority of what we're referencing in terms of like your biometric data to do with the health of the populace in general, you know, the kind of all morbidity rates, morbidity rates, all that kind of thing will be accessible via a centralized database. The physical storage for that database may be decentralized. So, for example, it may be stored on a server farm that's in London, and at the same time, there's a copy of it that's constantly updated on a server farm in Amsterdam. You know, that kind of principle is already being used by most of the industries, the business world, etc., because it's just good practice to protect your data records. Yeah. So they may say, oh yeah, it's decentralized. We're not allowed to look at your information, but their mates over in a different country or a different principality, they can look at the information and then just relay the information to us.
Yeah.
which is what they've been doing with that 5 eyes, 6 eyes alliance.
Sharing information, sharing the
Yeah.
data.
And
Yeah.
please don't forget things like the announcements of the Palantir system within the last few years, which is one of their principal methods of amalgamating various databases into a singular system that can be accessed by them, because it's meant for the security state to make use of. So medical records, school records, criminal records, all of it being brought together. And all of this stuff may be decentralized, but it gets into semantics then of them claiming shit like that. It's not really decentralized when you're providing it as a centralized searchable data field. It's centralized then, isn't it? And this again, just to bang on that point again, is part of why the concept of the mark of the beast is explicitly included in that biblical storytelling, the analogies that they're trying to get across to people to explain these concepts so that they can be aware and beware of them. If you start centralizing data like that, information that covers all aspects of people's lives, then at some point a bad actor, and I don't mean somebody that's just crap at remembering their lines, actor in the sense of they're taking part in the great global game, a bad actor will lay their hands on that power base and use it in a bad way against everybody else. And we've got so much history of that kind of shit going on. Isn't it funny how all of the major dictatorial regimes that slaughtered multiple millions of people all had really good record keeping? Isn't that funny how that goes together?
Yeah.
They may have destroyed a lot of the records afterwards to try and evade culpability and shit like that. But at the time of their reign of tyranny, etc., they were really good at record keeping. One of the things that made Rome such a powerful empire, record keeping. Same for Egypt. Same for Sumer. What made them powerful was their ability to control and monitor the dissemination of information. Same for the British Empire.
That's why they give you all your internet connections and roll them all out and wanted you all on.
Yeah.
Communicating.
Part of what on that Hugo Talks video, part of what he mentions is like it's a kind of silly simplification that they give in some of the public.
Yeah.
It's like, well, are you saying they're going to want us all to have these ID passport, vaccine passports? I've said it, said it a few times. But I don't have a smartphone. So how are they going to get me? And it's like, well, they're going to end up giving out for free those kind of wristbands, because those things in a commercial sense are not expensive to produce anymore.
No.
An RFID chip, as I mentioned earlier, the kind of passive RFID chips that don't require a power source are cheap as chips. In an ironic pun intended, they are cheap as chips now, which is why you commonly find them in packaging of goods, in food packaging and whatever. There's a chip, I think Tony mentioned something about this earlier. There'll be a chip in your dustbin. So your council can make sure that that dustbin is still in the right place at your address, and you're the person that's the registered user of that dustbin. So if they find anything odd in there, if you filled it up too much, they know whose dustbin it is that's breaching the rules, etc. That kind of tech is readily available and cheap as chips and already embedded into the economic system.
Yeah, and like I say, if you don't have a smartphone, if you don't have want to, come to the realization this is like not a way I want to be living, and then again, they're creating it to make it very hard. But again, it's numbers, isn't it? It's a numbers game. Yeah, and
how many people acquiesce and go along with it?
Yeah. Some people see them as gadgets, handy little gadgets that are useful and things like that. I do get that side of it, but the darker side of it, like you say, with the collection of all the information and that sort of biotech watch technologies really sort of took off the last sort of year or two, I'd say, or more. Last few years they've been, throwing these watches out with the phones, like, or get a watch with it for 20 quid or something, getting people, used to this type of communication because they can use it, they don't have to have the phone with them. They can have the phone somewhere else and they can still receive bits and bobs on that as well. And it'll tell you all your other stuff and tell you if you had a good night's sleep and whatever else, it's, it takes it too far. I just think we go too far, that's where it gets silly. So,
and it's a repeating, it's a never-ending canard. The fact that, well, you argue, some people will claim you're arguing against technology, or you're coming at it with that kind of Luddite approach that technology is automatically evil.
No, it's not. It's good.
No, it's not. It's the people. It's the people that implement how the technology is used that pass their evil intentions through the technology. The technology is just an instrument. Just like fire, I made this point before we came on air, just like fire, it can be beneficial, but it can also be damaging. It can be dangerous. So it's how it's utilized. If the fact that we have the ability to take an element that we call fire and we can actually use it as a technology, that means then the culpability, the implication is from us. The intent and the will that we pass through that instrument of how it is implemented into the world. So some of this technology, the ability to be able to monitor your own, biological vitals, as they say, that can be immensely beneficial. It can be.
It can help you, but
the risk here is how it is implemented and how it is utilized. And again, thank you for bringing it up, because it reiterates the point I was on about. Like, the core principle is about them being able to use information to control people. So it's not intrinsic to the technology itself. It's not that the concept of that technology being able to monitor your own biology is intrinsically, automatically bad. It's not. It's how that information is then going to be implemented in the manipulations that the controllers, the usurpers, are attempting to do on everyone.
And getting everybody continually checking their health on a regular, I mean, continually, most people are all right, it's, but
you will,
it's like turning people a load of hypochondriacs or whatever,
just pretend like you've got it. Everybody's ill, don't you know? We're all already constantly ill. They just need to give us a diagnosis so that we have a definition and a label we can give ourselves.
I mean, you can get blood pressure checks and things quite easily these days, but the watch has it all, it's that, isn't it?
Now you don't even have to Google it. The phone will just tell you how ill you are.
I've been listening to your conversations, and you're depressed and everything. It's like,
it could probably already been done. I was going to say it's not going to be long before this happens, but it's probably already happening. Somebody will be sitting there and the phone will just start telling them, it's like, do you have Munchausen? And they'll be like, do I? The phone will be going, yes, you do. You have Munchausen. Please go look at the diagnosis of Munchausen, and hopefully you'll get the irony of why I'm saying that. And
everyone has a little Google speaker these days, I see. I don't want one of them damn things, but I go into a few people's houses and do see them, and think, oh, okay, because that listens to everything, and that, and that's another collection, of data for them. It's listening into your home, your private conversations continually. And people have gone along with that, a lot of people, it seems, and seen it's okay. I've always thought that's just not, that's so invasive of privacy and stuff. Always held that belief for years anyway about stuff. So, I've seen it more getting, people are just sort of, because it's a tech gadget and it's shiny and bright. And we used to have that laugh or joke a few years ago, shiny bright thing, and it's like, just zoom in and it's brilliant, and get excited like a little child with it, but not realizing the implications and the darker side of things that they use and then manipulate you with, and they've got a direct link into your home. you know, literally, you know, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It's got to this. This is probably just me, because of my perception and my point of view on all this kind of shit. But it has got to the point where I feel like when I go and visit somebody, that when I walk through the front door, the first thing I should do is say, Alexa, Siri, and just
yeah,
see if I get a response. It's like, do you have one of those fucking devices in here?
yeah, or whatever
Because
the other
I
ones
want to
are.
be
Yeah,
aware of if you do or not. I don't just
yeah,
want to be suddenly surprised of like this thing starts chirping up, going, "Oh, you mentioned so and so. Do you want me to order some of those now?" It's like you might as well just have a member of the brainwashed, the sheepdogs in their costumes, standing in the corner of the room with a notepad.
We've even
Again,
mentioned even on your smart device, that's the same, and that's been
yeah.
proven. That's recording everything.
Again, I've said this quite a few times over the years, but it's worth adding in at this point again because I think it's relevant. For those of us that have experienced reality before the internet existed, for the generations still alive that have experienced life
I remember
before the
those days,
internet
Cookie.
existed.
Oh yes, I
Yeah?
remember those days. Yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
when I see the information, or when people tell me about things like those little devices, like we mentioned, the Alexa, Siri, whatever other brands are available, folks. Yeah. When people tell me about that kind of shit, in my mind, what I see is, as I described a moment ago as a joke, some person stood in the room listening and watching everything you're doing and making notes.
Yeah.
Because that is what these devices are. And whether you have trust in the corporate entities that produce this device and sold it to you, that's up to you. Yeah, personally, I don't have trust in those entities because they have systematically and repeatedly proven themselves to be untrustworthy. So therefore, to me, just acquiescing to the concept of having a monitor in the room with you, it is literally the view screen from 1984. The story, George Orwell's 1984, real name Eric Blair. It is literally one of those view screens. So if you try and tell me that that is perfectly normal and okay and lovely and it's so fantastic because it knows what music you like and what's your favorite snack food when you order in the shop, and I think you're fucking mental. I think you have a mental psychosis. Yeah, I don't want to be part of that. I'm not saying I would shun you completely. I know it sounds terrible. Let's all go and join the Amish. Yeah. I don't have that attitude to technology. I like technology, but I like being in control of the technology.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as I'm a control freak trying to use technology to control other people. No, I just want to have the ability to control a piece of technology that I own or supposedly own.
Well, like you say, to gain entry to various entertainment venues, that's the technology stopping you or allowing you in.
Yeah.
Checking if you've had
It's
the
not,
correct, things.
It's the same again. I say canard. I've used that word a few times tonight, but it's the same argument about guns, weapons technology. Maybe I should add this little caveat of in general, because now there are, computer-driven systems that can make this kind of decision automatically. But in general, weapons do not kill people. It is the people wielding those weapons that kill people. The weapon is just a technological instrument. It makes killing easier because your claws and your teeth are weak, whereas a big stabby blade is a bit of technology that makes it easier to do damage to other things, other people, other beings. But the technology itself, if you put that knife on the table and walk away, that knife is not suddenly going to, be flying through the air going, oh, I think I want to kill some people. Oh, let's get stabby. That's not how it works, is it?
Yeah. I always think the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah.
And again, those skills are going. Pen and paper, you
Yeah.
mentioned that before. With the like I say, I've seen in the last 20 years, just those skills seem to be going. Everyone's using a keyboard, typing with a keyboard. And give them pen and paper and write something out. It just seems to be not. The people don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Write letters.
For a lot of people as well, it's not even using a keyboard anymore, man.
Or just
They
the
just
phone, isn't
speak
it?
it.
Or
Yeah.
speak it. Yeah, exactly. Don't even just keep the
Most
word.
of my
Yes.
younger relatives now, they're not typing away on the phone. I've had to get used to this fact. They're like, I hear them say something. It's like, are you talking to me? You're asking me a question? Well, no, they're saying a question into their phone so the phone does the search for them. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I thought you were talking to me. It's like, no, I'm talking to the Black Mirror.
Never switch them things on. I know they're still going and they'll listen, but I don't use them. I like to do things for myself, like, just move the mouse around. It's not that hard.
Again, there can be a double-edged sword effect to that, because I know people who are not very good at typing.
Well, is it fair enough
if you, spelling and whatever, so they prefer to say what they want to the device, and the device then turns it into a text that gets sent to whoever.
Yeah.
I get that. Again, this is why I say it's not the technology in and of itself. It is how it is being implemented, which is why we keep coming back to that same point of, do you or do you not put trust in authorities, that claim they are authorities? Have they shown you enough proof, enough evidence, enough track record of experience and other examples of their work, etc.? Have they shown you enough so that you trust them, that they will be looking after you or caring for you when dealing with this information, this data that is generated by the technologies?
No.
Exactly. So the fact that you can get a smartphone that does this, that, and the other, and it's like, well, yeah, it can do all that stuff, but to be allowed access to that, I have to agree that these faceless corporate entities can harvest all that information about me. Sorry, I don't agree with that. So therefore, I'll just leave that device. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm somewhat saddened that I can't make use of that technology's abilities because we've got these parasitic things attached to it.
Yeah. That's the problem, isn't it? They've tainted it, so changed the internet into what it is now,
Again, this is, it could be argued that it's not organic development that has led to this situation of kind of like a commercial tourist trap. It's not just that these corporations have been encouraged by market demand to supply this kind of thing to us. That is not true whatsoever. This stuff has been happening for systematically planned reasons. And this is where we come back and up to date to the question of, they don't need to stick a chip in you because they've persuaded a large number of the population to be walking around carrying this device with them all the time, or wearing it on their wrist, whatever, that gives them all that information that they wanted in the first place. Just like Facebook is based on a system that was created by the CIA that was called LifeLog, and it was basically just shelved for a few years until they transitioned it under the face of Zuckerturd, and then it became Facebook. And now all of a sudden, whereas in the past, if the government said to you, oh, we want to know this, and this about you, please provide this information for us, thank you, most people would have gone, fuck off, government, I ain't telling you that shit. Right? Now, people willingly upload that information about themselves on a daily basis, day in, day out. Every little thought that's going through their head is, oh, I'll stick that on Facebook. Oh, Facebook, here, Mr. Zuckerturd, look at my dinner. These are the calorific intakes I'm having today. Add that to biometric data. You think about the sheer amount of information they can garner from that data of what you're eating, whether you enjoy it or not, how it's interpreted by your friends, the calorific values of what you're intaking, and the biometric data of how that intake affects you biologically
and how long you're going to live.
neurologically.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, that's
All of that without needing to stick a
yeah.
chip in you.
And that's what people are doing. Like I say, there's a lot to be gathered from it all, and then we also see the censorship around that. People come along and pointing things out and saying, "Don't," the book burning. We've talked about, the
Yeah,
era of that we're in at the moment.
yeah. We are in the new dark ages.
We are, and they are beginning to, as we've seen all year, more so, close in, and people getting kicked,
Yeah.
chucked, strikes, all the rest of it.
Yeah. As Dinny says, it's fast now. It is going very fast now. The fact that, like I mentioned earlier, in Israel, they're attempting, I say attempting because it's whether the people really go along with it or not, they are attempting to mandate the wearing of those kind of wristbands that carries your green pass data, so that to enforce their apartheid state of the unclean and the clean, the sacred and the profane. Yeah, that's happening now this summer in America. I showed you that still image. I put the link in for Hugo's video about this, of a Fox News article talking about how they're trying to suggest it to the American public. So we're going to get it here as well. Very rapidly over this summer. They want to try and push that track and trace app being transitioned into some kind of vaccine passport app combined with things like those wristbands. So if people say like, oh, well, I haven't got a smartphone, here's a free wristband. Because like I said, the RFID technology is dirt cheap. So they'll be quite, considering they're spending so many millions just on advertising, they're not going to bat an eyelid about handing out these wristbands. Yeah. And again, because this is agenda driven, it's not about profit. It's not a profit motive thing. Yeah. They want to achieve their technocracy system. So they'll quite happily expend resources. They'll go into debt, etc., etc. They don't give a fuck. They create the money system in the first place anyway. So to them, money is in effect infinite.
Yeah, it's theirs, isn't it, to use as they want?
Yeah. They can just keep printing it, no matter whether it correlates to actual resources available to people or not. It doesn't matter. There has been in recent weeks more reports of the economic experts acknowledging that, inflation is now starting to get to silly levels, and it looks like it's going to accelerate.
Well,
so in other words, that's them raising the warning flag of economic crash again.
Already, because they're saying costs are going up. I noticed Steve put in the chat that stuff has gone up where he is, buying goods and stuff, various things. Air freight costs have gone tripled or something, I read somewhere, over the last year because of all this. So obviously that would mean prices go up, for your everyday things.
Yeah. I saw it. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to scroll back through the chat because I thought I saw a comment as well. Hello to everyone who's joined the chat since I was saying hello earlier. I'll try and catch up on everyone that's in the chat and say hello to people in a minute or two or whatever, but I wanted to pick up on this one. Hey, DJ, I hope you're well. It's a kind of catch-22. We need a device to communicate, but at the same time, it's like selling your soul, having the device listening, knowing your every move. Yeah. This is part of that trickery of the benefit of the technology, as in, like you say, you get that communication, you get the ability to store information. Yeah, you can be walking around with a library in your hand, an entire library of information in your hand. But at the same time, they're attaching all these connections into that system. There are methods to have the technology to a degree that don't include all those kind of connections. Yeah, I've mentioned this so many times over the last few years. You can get things like what I call dumb phones, or now they're talking about non-Google phones.
Or you,
Check
or you,
Corbett report, some of
mm,
the coverage he's done on that. You can get phones that don't include all those app connections, the monitoring connections,
yeah,
location
yeah,
detection, etc.
yeah. All the Google services on it and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm,
And there's other ways as well. It depends how much effort you're willing to put into it. Some of the stuff requires a bit of technological knowledge and ability. But now there is, like I say, commercially available dumb phones. So you don't have to worry about figuring out how to, de-app your phone or, de-Google it or whatever and potentially ruin it. But instead you can buy one that's basically already done, set up.
They've taken a whole generation off down that easy chat type app
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
and going back,
Constantly in contact, never
yeah,
alone.
yeah, going back to say just the phone call and texting to them would be like
Yeah.
taking 1,000 steps back, and we're just like, in the sense that
So,
we're so used to using those types of things, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? But you could
yeah.
utilize the good, people do see through these things as well. We saw through what we saw through, going through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and seeing seeing things for what they really are eventually. Then maybe that happens, and there's going to be, like I say, the awakening is underway
It is,
anyway, which is why they're
yeah.
scared anyway and doing all this shit and trying
It
to,
is,
lock us down and kill our humanity, our spirituality off, try and depress us. And, it's not working though, is it?
no.
So,
If anything, it is. I could argue that this is fitting in a Christian theological point of view as well, because this is like the great reaving, as in the sifting the wheat from the tars, the wheat from the chaff, and they're forcing people into this. Gary, Society of the Spectacle, shout out to him, and Days as well. We were chatting about this before we started broadcasting, and that point of. As Gary described, they're forcing an existential crisis onto the general populace. And for a lot of the general populace, they don't have the knowledge, the ability, the interest, the general wherewithal to deal with that kind of psychic attack. You said this before, it's a
yes, I
psychic
have.
attack.
It is indeed. Yeah, that's what it
It's
is.
like they've taken people to the front steps of a sacrificial altar, and they're throwing them through a glass window or something. They're literally forcing people to go through this process of, what do you mean my life's non-essential? What do you mean you want me to be monitored all the time? What do you mean you want to stick this stuff in me? What the fuck is going on here? Existential crisis. People are reeling from the reality of, like, what do you mean the world doesn't work the way it did last year? Now all of a sudden we got to, we can't go here, we can't go there, we can't do this, we can't do that. Any minute we could die. Everybody's infectious, everybody's ill. Existential crisis. And for many people, that's the main thing they're struggling with. This why the rise in the suicide rate, why the rise in general violence, in terms of, like, the system is actively trying to steer that violent intent into things like their controlled opposition groups, their protest groups. Why have you seen a rise in that kind of violent output for the last few years? Because people have been pushed to that edge. It's like being you're being convinced anyway. For many people, they're being tricked and convinced that they're stood on the edge of mortality. So it initiates an existential crisis, and many of them don't react well. They don't deal well with it, and you end up with some kind of uncontrolled outburst or psychosis. They're then trying to harvest a lot of that psychosis and turn it into this new religious cult that I've referred to. The Covidians. You don't question, you just believe, and it becomes like an anointment. You've received your holy sacrament, you've had the jabby jab, you have now been anointed. All praise the great tech. It is literally a cult-like mentality, And a lot of that can rise out of people struggling mentally and emotionally such that they're being exploited by manipulative psychological attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. The governmental teams that are coming up with the various ways to supposedly manipulate us all to get us to do what they want us to do.
And the ridiculousness of it all over the last 12 months, like you say, limiting stuff, scarcity tactics, all kinds of things being pulled this past year.
What was it called on the, was it that Biden, the sort of table layout we looked at of how they basically psychologically torture people? And one of the points was making illogical demands, making meaningless demands, like stand on one leg.
Yeah.
Simon Says jump up and down on the spot.
Yeah.
It's those kind of meaningless demands that push people into a thought pattern repetition, and you only have to repeat things so many times before they start becoming subconscious to your general day-to-day life. And as has been pointed out over the last few months, there's a lot of people now whose attitude is, well, even if they tell me the COVID stuff is over, I'm still going to wear my mask, because they've become entrained into that new learned habit, that new cognitive behavior of they don't feel safe and secure unless they got that thing over their face.
Yeah. It was always going to create that as well, wasn't it, in a few?
Yeah. I warned it. It's right when they started doing it, especially when it comes to the kids.
Yes.
Because children, I think it's more particular prepubescent, because there's a distinct chemically driven mental change during puberty and after puberty, where people, it's when they really start to become independent in their thinking. Even if they're not very outspoken, if they might be a bit shy and they don't like conflict and so on, that's not the point. It's just the fact that they find more of their own sovereignty through that chemical process that happens during puberty.
Yeah.
Prior to puberty, most children are like little monkeys. Monkey see, monkey do. They copy, they pattern repeat what they see around them. To the point that you often get that relationship of the favorite parent to the child, where the child pretty much copies everything the parent does, and they're like a mini-me version of the parent.
Yeah.
And I say mostly because I know, it's not a stereotype. It's just an observation of child behavior and learning patterns, neurological patterns, etc. Prepubescent children are more likely to absorb and internalize repeated messages. So when the system is saturating them in media, including what they're being told by their so-called teachers, that they're not safe, they're not secure unless they do all the stuff, the mask on the face and all that. So that's so heavily programming those children at that age to be scared all the time, unless they've got their little, security blanket attached to their face.
Yeah.
In the past, before all this shit, we used to try and encourage children to grow out of that security attachment. Like the security blanket, or kids pick up various things, like they'll have a favorite toy or something.
Yes.
And they don't feel comfortable and secure unless that object is around. That's what they've done. They've replaced that with the face nappy. So now kids are going to feel they're going to be going into psychosis because they won't feel normal, what they will define as normal, unless they're doing all the stuff that they've been taught. That is potentially so damaging for the next generation, and they're going to be the generation that is operating this current model of society that they're trying to force upon us all. So who will be the brown shirts, the real brown shirts, not just the COVIDian people that are shouting about, oh, it's so great to be vaccinated at the moment. The real brown shirts will be that upcoming generation that have been saturated in this indoctrination. They have totally internalized it. They will be like Mao's little army with their red book.
Let's hope not.
Or Hitler's youth. Yeah, they will be the brown shirts that enforce the new normal on everybody else.
Well, let's wait and see, because there's another protest in London this weekend, isn't there? Another few people are expected to turn out, and as it goes forward, it's going to get more and more. I think as we go through the rest of spring and summer, it'll just get more people out, and when that reaction comes, these people who are in that state, I think, will see to take these things off. The kids will see it. It's just stupid. They'll tell their friends, you don't need to wear it. Take it off, or don't be scared. It's nothing. And the
dissonance will become more irritating for them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to witness more and more obvious displays that, for one thing, there is no pandemic. And secondly, you haven't really got anything to worry about any more than you did in 2017 or 2018.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that dissonance is going to become more and more irritating, like an itch they cannot scratch unless they face and address the things that are causing the dissonance in the first place. If they keep trying to dance around it and ignore it, they're going to most people, I was going to say to the rest of us, but I'm trying to be careful not to create the us and them kind of shit which they're trying to perpetuate. To most of us, they're going to seemingly become more insane. So if you think things like the TikTok dancing and whatever is silly now, if that's a demonstration of some of the insanity of what's happening, some of them are going to get sillier and sillier and sillier, because the dissonance and the pressure of that dissonance on their psyche is going to push them further and further into absurdity, because the only way they can perpetuate the illusion is by descending further and further into absurdity.
I dread to think what's next.
They have to. I'm trying to think of a metaphor, an analogy to describe what I mean. They're going to have to start believing that the moon is a marshmallow, and that the sun is just a massive flower in the sky, and it's just really tall. Just think of the most absurd things you can think of. That's the kind of level they're going to end up going to, because the obvious reality in front of their senses that they're being perceiving with their senses is going to be showing them something completely opposite to what they're being told by the talking faces on the screens. So the government's going to keep pumping out the lies, and what they see in their day-to-day lives around them, in their neighborhood, in their world, is going to be completely counter to that. So the only way their psyche is going to be able to deal with that is they have to descend further and further into absurdity. They have to create a fake world within their own minds to perpetuate the bullshit they keep being told. Most psychologists would tell you that's usually at the point when people suffer a psychotic break. And either they'll have an outburst that's not good for them or others. They could become violent or extremely depressive or whatever. They could just have some kind of psychotic episode, or in a kind of worst case scenario, they'll have a psychotic break in a psychological sense. Their mind will split. Again, I've pointed this out for a while. A lot of the stuff they've been doing is MK Ultra. It's just now it's mass marketed MK Ultra, or Monarch would be more accurate. They know this, and they're relying on some of it to enable their justifications. Out of a population in the UK of approximately 70 million, the system likes to tell us that the 1 in 10 people is psychotic. So therefore, out of 70 million, that means 700,000 of them are psychotics. And if the government's propaganda can cause them to trip out into some kind of psychotic break or develop a psychosis such that they will just absorb and repeat the propaganda, the indoctrination that they're being fed, then that's a large enough number for the government to turn around and say, look, everybody loves it. Yeah, the BBC will do a vox pop where they'll interview 100 people in the street, but the end edited package that they'll show on the BBC News will be the replies from only 3 people out of the 100 that they interviewed, because those 3 people were the ones that had the psychosis that meant they repeated the narrative. Oh yeah, we love it, it's great, stick it in me more. Well, yeah, we want more of it, please, Bojo. They won't show you the other 97 people that said a completely different response. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know this, don't we? The power of the edit, and you know the way that they've always done it. You know, throughout. You know, you can say forever with the media.
Propaganda.
Yeah, the newspapers, same thing.
Maybe now would be a good time to. I'll say a quick hello to people in the chat, and then I'll play a tune. Hopefully, lift our spirits a little bit. Hang on, which one am I looking for? That one, share screen. I just want to share this that Pete put in not long ago. It's like what happens when the desperate humans, you know, we manage to escape Earth and all the craziness, and we go to Mars, and what is a bunch of aliens say, fuck off. Take your insanity back home with you, crazy humans. Yeah, I thought that was quite good. Yeah, hello everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining in. Tinkle Think and Nick GB, hello. And I know I saw DJ in there earlier. Thanks for joining in, mate. Hope you're doing well over in the USA. It's crazy everywhere now. And this thing will not leave people alone. It will get to your doorstep eventually. Miss Masculus, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat. And I'm sure I saw some other names a while ago while I was busy ranting. Kendo, hello, mate. Hope you're doing well. I'm trying to scrolling. Keep them doobies rolling. While you're scrolling. I can't think of another word to end the line. Addicted to that scrolling. I'm waiting for a dopamine hit. Please post how much you like me and love everything I do. Till then, I'll keep on scrolling. I'll keep them doobies rolling until I get that dopamine from you. I could turn that into a whole lyric. Yeah. Clicking on, scrolling up, scroll down. Right, I've scrolled up quite a lot, and I'm not seeing other names like I thought there was earlier. Maybe I was just imagining it. I was hallucinating. The anal swab has finally reached my brain. It's been working its way up there.
You need to have a lyric with that in, you see. You know, the Schwab. No, that'll work.
Just need to swab. Just to swab a little bit. Swab just a little bit. Swab just a little bit more. Swab. Yeah, I think maybe I should play some music, because then people are actually really good at singing can, you know, do some singing and it'll be better. I'm sure. I think I saw Nazi in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling, but I can't find it again now. So sorry, folks, if I miss you out in the chat. It's just, yeah, because I'm terrible at keeping track of the chat room. And now trying to catch up with it afterwards is just, yeah, it's jumping around all over the place. Tears in a Vial, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat. Right, yeah, okay. I'm going to play a tune that played a while ago. They first put this up on their channel a few months ago now, yeah. And I think it's still highly relevant, still says it really well, and it's a nice tune. It's quite upbeat, even though obviously it's talking about some of all this craziness, and it's, you know, pointing out a lot of this craziness, but they do it well, and it's got that energetic rhythm to it. So hopefully we can, bring the vibration up a bit. I've got to be careful with that. I don't want to be doing the bent arm thing. Mention that. Shout out to Days as well for that. He pointed out a long time ago about look for the bent arm, the crooked arm in some of the symbolism that they show us. And the last year, they've been talking about the roll up your sleevers, as people say. And in recent weeks, there's now a new media campaign where they're really pushing that point. And they've got a cartoon stylized arm for every different ethnic group with the little elastoplast thing on their arm to show that they've had the jabby jab and whatever. And then they show an image of just the whole of the UK all covered with these, the bent arm, the crooked arm, I think Dave said the paw of Samson. Was it? I'm not sure. Probably getting that wrong, remembering it wrong. But yes, sorry. Digressing from that, the crooked arm. Instead, let's play this music. Forgot to do this earlier. I need to grab the link and open it in a different tab because otherwise it doesn't get the audio, does it? So just to be awkward, I have to open it up again. Wait for the crappy, shitty advert. See this technology? They're just trying to stuff crap adverts in my face. They can stuff it. Oh. They can assimilate it into their nether reasons. Why do you keep repeating as soon as I try and rewind it? Bloody technology. Okay, I think I've managed to figure it out, folks. I kept hitting it with my hammer, and now it seems to be ready to display. So let me multitask, click through that. Yes, I want the audio. Share! Right, I'm going to mute myself and shut up and play this.
Do you people know you're living in a pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic? Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Now Boris Johnson, he can only do what he's told. Every speech that he makes is already bought and sold. He cannot flip the script that sits at his desk. His place is a mess. Party politics is infested with vested interest, cronyism and tyrants. No wonder these pirates setting fire to these streets. Enraged by the cage that governs them like admiral fleets. Enslave the seas with people, build a man-made disease. Moral compass points to Trump and his gun. The same moral compass that dropped an all-American atom bomb. Every morning should begin with the sound of silence in honor of all victims of war, rape and violence. A drum beat of feet, we all clap along. An ode to our healers, a song that took too long to come. Awakening the feminine with state-skin adrenaline. We waiting like gentlemen to greet you at the gate to break this pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. To meet the rules, to greet the fools, to asleep to realize the right to choose. We need a new freedom school. The seeds of change succeed in you. And you, and you, and you too. Sacred temple, face mask central. Where's your face? You know you wear a disgrace when you compare yourself to a virus. Brother Jesus, sister ISIS, myths and legends. Unite the red tent and brethren. Cause we rise higher than our confined desires. And we know liars control our suppliers of natural resources. The fact of seesaws is you tip one way, then you tip the next. Empathy presents, and party politics rejects. And no one can agree on the fact that we have freedom. And no one holds the power to keep you believing in a pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic. Now take your face mask off. Attack the stream of conscious consciousness with a vaccine with no consequence. And they wonder why there's no confidence. Look you in the eye and lie to your face. Remember there's a screen between you and the chosen few whose payroll pays for the debates. So ask the politician if they know how to listen, then request the definition of cronyism. From Eton College to the throne of isms, all legislation is a paid decision. As musicians, we arouse the chords, and we're trying to move the feet of the House of Lords, and we're trying to compete with their jousts and swords. We fight with peace and they fight with wars. We invent the keys and they lock the doors. We defend the trees and they condemn the cause. Cause everybody knows that THC is one of our greatest cures. So how can you deny this is globalism when for so long we've seen colonialism? Do you really think each country made its own decision to control coronavirus through chauvinism? New World Order, G20 Summit, global pandemic, but who could run it? Golden ratio flows through us all. One people, one world, our curtain call. This is a pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul. Pandemic, scamdemic, eugenic, that's how you face my soul.
Brilliant tune, excellent lyrics and a nice rhythm.
Yeah,
well performed. I like the all the different instruments they use. You know, they use a really good mixture of instruments, which I enjoy as well. You know, because being a musician, it's nice to hear different things, melodies played on different instruments, stuff like that. I did put the link in the chat. Go and check their channel out. There's loads of great music on there, and a lot of good conversation stuff as well. And please remember, just like with everything else, because this is another one, I'll say the word again, canard. This is another one of those canards that people trip over, or you're certainly encouraged to trip over this repeatedly. You do not have to agree with everything somebody says or believes to still appreciate other things that they do. Yeah, I really enjoy their music. I really appreciate a lot of the stuff they talk about. I just disagree with them on one or two points. Yeah, same with a lot of other stuff. That you'll find a lot of music tracks in my playlist, the conscious music playlist. I don't necessarily agree with everything those artists talk about. Some of them I don't agree at all, but I still appreciate the music that they put out. Yeah, there's this difficulty these days for a lot of people that they've been pushed into a kind of absolutist mindset, where unless somebody is exactly in the same ideological bracket as themselves, they refuse to be interested in anything they're doing or saying or whatever. And so that's not good for science. Yeah, if people claim they trust the science and all that lot, then you've got to be able and willing to look at information that is counter to your hypothesis. Yeah, and I'll add that in as a caveat for all the stuff that I was ranting about earlier. It's my hypothesis on some of the information and some of the agendas and narratives that have developed and been pushed over the last, certainly the last several years. And as I talked about, some of the ideas go way back into history. It's my hypothesis, my perception, my point of view on all that stuff. I know other people have different points of view. That's cool. If we didn't have different points of view, we wouldn't be getting closer to the truth. We'd just be stuck in dogma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shout out for Steve as well. Please go and check his channel out, Steve to Goose, and look for the mystery show on a Thursday night, 8 p.m. But he's also recently been doing broadcasts on other days. I haven't had the chance to catch up with the other stuff you've been putting up, mate. But yeah, check his channel out and you'll find links there to his live streams And if you do all, you know what YouTube's like now, if you do all the stuff like clicking the bell and whatever, you should hopefully get some notifications. You might get some, but you're not necessarily guaranteed to always be notified of what people are, you know, what content creators are doing. The Gestapo will decide whether you are allowed to know what is happening, what is going on. Let me bring up the meme factory one more time as I wrap things up. We're coming up to the hour, so I think it's just because I haven't done this really much recently, just to refer to, I'm calling it the meme factory. Yeah, this is where often a lot of the the memes are shared around, and a lot of them are always really good. Right, thanks to T for doing these. This was based on what I was talking about the other night, putting the Cali tongue on his mask.
Yeah.
And T's done a great job of this as well. I think I still prefer the unicorn one there. the two together. Because, you know, like I was saying, like I was ranting about earlier, this thing presents itself as being lovely and attractive and homely. You know, it's all things nice, you know, sweetness and light and all that kind of stuff. You know? It presents itself that way, whereas there's something else behind that facade. But I wanted to show some of these others as well. Buckfast. He likes his Buckfast. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. Man, Linda Gates has been sorting out her divorce process. You know, she's getting her payout from the divorce.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I thought this one was highly appropriate. I'm not sure. Is this genuine? I haven't been to the Economist site to see, like, is this their current front cover? Post in the chat box if you know the answer.
I'll keep an eye on it.
But it's just the fact that, sorry, coughing endlessly. It's just the fact that something like this could easily be,
yeah, it's genuine. Yeah,
mocked up.
Tony says it's genuine. Yeah,
yeah. But you notice the, like, yeah, there's the all-seeing eye, the big G. Funny that, isn't it? Yeah. Why the big G? Let's see. You know, could say that's the Senate, not the Senate building, is it? Is it with that frontage with the big? Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, the Senate building. But it could also be an allusion back to that Greco-Roman past, the power of Rome, you know, all that kind of thing. But anyway, I thought it was very interesting if that is their current front cover, because this is exactly the stuff I've been talking about for years, and why I'll quite happily say I ranted. I ranted a lot about not getting drawn into the cryptocurrency stuff as it is, as the way it's progressing.
Yeah.
Like Admiral Akbar says, it's a trap. You know, I'm not disagreeing with the technology, that cryptography technology, blockchain technology, like, for example, me setting up my page on Odyssey. Yeah. Yes, I totally agree with that. I think it's a great technology, and it's going to have loads of useful, beneficial things that can be done with it. But I just saw that the cryptocurrencies, the way they were being presented to the public, and the way the public was being encouraged to do it, even though the system was sort of going, oh, only naughty people use it, and they go to a website that's called the Silk Road, and they do terrible things, like they purchase drugs. So the news was actively telling the public where to go and how to do it. So to claim that they didn't want it because they thought it was illegal, and again, this thing disguises itself as caring for you, while at the same time it's doing the opposite. So yeah, I think this is very, very appropriate, apropos and also coincides, coincidentally, as a coincidink for the coincidink theorists, to stuff that Schwab and others have talked about of a potential cyber attack or some form of cyber problem that causes economic catastrophe, such that they have to transition to these new government version cryptocurrencies. You know, the UBI, as they've called, the Universal Benefit Income, whatever, or benefit payment, will be a cryptography-based system, a blockchain-based system. So that, like the other stuff I was ranting about earlier, it can all be interlinked into a monitorable database so they can track and trace everything you do, blah, blah, blah. And they, you know, the money they give you will all be in these government-sanctioned cryptocurrencies. This is a classic one, yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, path of least resistance, comforting lives, the government loves you. You know, this is a good one that unfortunately it's quite long. You know, for a lot of people, they won't take the time to read everything. You know, the thing with a lot of memes that work so well is if you've got just like 1 or 2 points in the message and it gets the point across really quickly, especially if it's got that kind of visual element to help people grasp the idea. But I think this is excellent in the sense of, yeah, here's a nice list of or pretty much all the logical contradictions of what the governmental propaganda bullshit has been spouting for over a year now. You know, 2 weeks. Yeah. Are you all time travelers? Or are we all stuck in some form of time loop that lasts 14 days? You know, we've been repeating the same 2 weeks for what should be a year and a half, near enough. That one. I think T put this one together. Yeah, Tony's put this one together. You know, all the vaccine damaged people. And if you think there is no damage from the vaccines, then yeah, you're missing the point. There's decades of evidence that they do cause damage. The system, the pharmaceutical companies, the government themselves will claim that the dangers are less than the benefits. You know, the benefits outweigh the risks. But when you look at the track history of the vaccine damage court proceedings and how much has been paid out, just in the case of in the USA, you know, you can find the information out there, just how much money has actually been paid out to people who've successfully pursued a court case and been given some kind of award. And yet they claim that, oh no, everything's perfectly safe. They have been actually much more ambiguous with their wording in recent months. Have you noticed that? Now they're very unlikely to say that vaccines are safe. They'll make the point of they'll say like, oh, but the benefits outweigh the negatives. You know? They've finally admitted the logical point that they cannot, in truth, in any honesty, say that they are safe, with that implication in the statement being that the receiver, the public, comprehends that as meaning they are 100% safe. They're not. They never have been. Yeah, they use that as a simplified language. The newsreader or the talking head on the TV, whatever, will say, yeah, vaccines are safe. But that's a simplified, ambiguous language that they've spent decades now dancing around that in court cases, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Cookie, I'm going to have to drop out in a little bit because it's past 10 now. So
that's
I don't
cool,
know
man.
Gonna...
No, that was the last one because I've already shown the Martian.
Okay.
The Martian one with them telling us all to go home. So I was done at that point as well. So thanks, folks, for joining us. Thanks for everyone in the chat room. As I always say, I'm sorry if I missed you. I scroll through and I try to say hello to everyone, but sometimes it's just the way it goes. I don't catch your name in the chat room or something. I'm not ignoring anyone. even if I don't agree with you or don't like you or whatever, I'd still give you a shout out in the chat room. Yeah. Anyway, we will be back again Wednesday night, 8 p.m. GMT.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
On the Reality Chat channel. As I mentioned earlier, please check out Steve Tagoose, his channel for the Thursday night mystery show. And also check out posttruthworld.net.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's .net, isn't it? Dr. Rock does his broadcast, his podcast on there every Thursday night as well. And you can find links from there to like his back catalogue of podcasts. And as you know, there's plenty of good information out there. Don't believe all the bullshit. Don't believe all the hype. And don't let them terrorize you into their bullshit. We'll see you again soon, Wednesday night, most likely.
Yep.
Thanks again, folks.
Cheers all. Thank you.